Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin by considering a concept that is as old as human nature itself: evil. Not evil in the grandiose or mythological sense, but evil in the way it manifests in everyday human behavior. The demon I am referring to is not some supernatural entity lurking in the shadows. No, this is a psychological construct, a metaphor for those individuals in our lives who exude toxicity, whose actions and behaviors have a destructive, corrosive impact on our well-being and growth. Now, before we dive deeper, let me first make it clear that when I speak of demons, I am referring to psychological traits that destroy relationships, sabotage personal development, and manipulate the vulnerable. These people are often adept at hiding their true nature, appearing charming or harmless at first. But over time, their effect on you becomes more insidious, more damaging. And it is crucial that you as individuals learn to recognize the signs so that you can protect yourself from their influence. When it comes to recognizing harmful behavior in others, one of the most insidious and damaging tactics is gaslighting. This term has become somewhat of a buzzword in recent years, but its psychological impact cannot be overstated. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation where an individual makes another person question their own perception of reality, their memories, or even their sanity. The term originates from a 1944 movie, Gaslight, in which a man manipulates his wife into doubting her own perceptions of events in order to gain control over her. Now, let's break down why this is so dangerous. Gaslighting isn't just about telling blatant lies. It's not simply saying something that isn't true. It's about systematically warping the way someone sees themselves and the world around them. The gaslighter will make subtle, often seemingly innocent comments or suggestions designed to erode the victim's confidence in their own judgment. For example, a person might repeatedly tell you that something you vividly remember never actually happened, that you're exaggerating, or that you're being overly sensitive. They may claim that you are misinterpreting a situation, even though you know deep down that your perception is correct. Over time, this constant undermining of your reality creates a kind of cognitive dissonance, a mental tug-of-war, where you begin to second-guess yourself. One of the most sinister aspects of gaslighting is that it often starts small. The gaslighter doesn't immediately launch into a full, blown assault on your psyche. No, they begin with small contradictions, tiny distortions that, when combined, begin to have a profound effect. It's not uncommon for them to dismiss your feelings, telling you that you're overreacting when you express concern. These dismissals might seem innocuous in the moment, but cumulatively, they have the effect of making you doubt your own emotional responses, leaving you vulnerable to further manipulation. The more you question your perceptions, the more control the gaslighter gains over you. It's a dangerous cycle, and one that can leave you mentally and emotionally drained. The real power of gaslighting lies in its subtlety and its ability to manipulate your very sense of self. The gaslighter doesn't need to directly attack you. What they do is far more strategic. They manipulate the environment, the narrative, and the way in which you understand what is happening to you. They might deny having said things that you clearly remember them saying, or they might twist facts and events so that you begin to wonder if you are misremembering or imagining. This creates a sense of confusion, and with enough time, the victim starts to feel unmoored from reality, unsure of what's real and what's not. It's as if the gaslighter is slowly, systematically rearranging the pieces of your psychological puzzle until you can no longer make sense of the picture. And once they've achieved this, they have complete control over your thoughts and perceptions. The impact of gaslighting extends far beyond just making you feel confused in the moment. The longer this manipulation goes on, the more it chips away at your self-esteem and sense of worth. It's not just that you're doubting what you remember or what you perceive. It's that you start to doubt your very ability to think clearly or to trust your judgment. This constant mental whiplash forces you to seek validation from the gaslighter, to look for their approval or permission to validate your own thoughts and experiences. The psychological toll is immense. You may begin to feel isolated, like you're losing grip on reality, and the gaslighter capitalizes on this sense of isolation. They make you feel like you're the problem, like you're the one who can't be trusted, and that only they have the right answer or understanding of what's happening. What is particularly disturbing about gaslighting is that it doesn't always come from obvious villains. It doesn't always look like the manipulative, malicious actions of a movie villain. Sometimes the gaslighter is someone who appears genuinely concerned for your well-being, someone who may even be charming or convincing. They know exactly what to say to make you doubt yourself, to make you feel like you're not seeing things clearly. And this is why it can be so difficult to identify and confront. When you start to feel that your own sense of reality is slipping away, the gaslighter's influence over you grows stronger. You might feel helpless or weak, and the gaslighter will exploit that vulnerability, further entangling you in their web of deceit. There's a deeper, almost philosophical element to this as well. Gaslighting targets your relationship with truth itself. It goes beyond personal manipulation. It's an attack on your capacity to discern what is real, what is true, and what is false. In essence, gaslighting creates a situation where the very foundation of your understanding of the world is called into question, and once your trust in your own perception is eroded, you lose your grounding. You become more susceptible to external control, more willing to accept whatever narrative the gaslighter presents, because you no longer trust your own ability to understand the world around you. The psychological damage of gaslighting is cumulative and long-lasting. It takes time to rebuild the confidence you once had in your own perception of reality. It's like slowly becoming unmoored from the very anchor that once held you steady in the stormy seas of life. Once you've recognized the signs of gaslighting, the path to healing becomes clearer. The first step is to acknowledge the truth of your own experience, to recognize that you are not crazy, you are not imagining things, and that your feelings and perceptions are valid. This is crucial for self-reclamation. After that, it's about building back your self-esteem, seeking support from others who can help you validate your experiences, and gradually reasserting control over your own narrative. To prevent being gaslighted, it's essential to develop a strong sense of self-awareness and a deep understanding of your own values and boundaries. This will help you recognize when someone is trying to manipulate or distort your reality. Surround yourself with people who respect and support your autonomy, those who will validate your perceptions and help you see through the fog created by toxic individuals. And perhaps most importantly, trust yourself. The more you trust your own instincts, the harder it will be for someone to distort your sense of self and your relationship with the truth. One of the most destructive behaviors that can emerge in toxic relationships, and one that is often tied to the concept of a demon in one's life, is the constant undermining of your self-worth. It's a subtle, insidious process that doesn't always present itself in overt ways. The person who seeks to undermine you does not usually come at you directly, accusing you or belittling you outright in an obvious fashion. Rather, they work behind the scenes, slowly eroding your sense of self, making you feel inadequate, unworthy, and incapable of achieving what you know you are capable of. This can be especially difficult to recognize because it doesn't happen all at once. It's a gradual process, a continuous stream of little jabs, comments that on the surface might seem harmless. They might say something like, "You always overthink things," or "You're too sensitive," or "Maybe that's just not for you." Each remark seems small, trivial even, but over time, they pile up. These aren't just criticisms of your actions or decisions. They are subtle attacks on who you are as a person, on your very essence. And this is where the danger lies. When you start to believe those comments, when you internalize them and start thinking there must be some truth to them, The individual who seeks to undermine your self-worth doesn't need to yell at you or berate you to get their message across. Instead, they rely on more sophisticated methods: passive-aggressive comments, sarcasm, or veiled criticism disguised as helpful advice. At first, it may feel like they are just being honest or concerned, but this is precisely the trap. They are not offering constructive criticism. They are attacking your fundamental sense of value. The difference is crucial. A constructive critique helps you grow, builds your confidence, and pushes you to improve. But undermining your self-worth strips you of your dignity and reduces your sense of self to a point where you begin to question whether you are worthy of anything at all. This process takes hold because it begins to infiltrate the way you see yourself. You might start to doubt your own abilities, believing that you are not as capable as you once thought. Maybe I am too sensitive, you might tell yourself after one too many dismissive comments, or maybe I can't really handle this after a few pointed remarks about your ability to cope with stress. Over time, these doubts start to take root, and what was once a confident, self-assured person becomes someone who second-guesses their every move. This erosion of confidence is not a one-time occurrence. It's a constant process, often carried out by someone who claims to care about you. They'll play the role of a concerned friend or partner, always looking out for you, but in reality, they are consistently making you feel small and weak. It's important to realize that this is a form of psychological manipulation. The individual undermining your self-worth does so with purpose. They are not simply offering unsolicited advice or helping you. They are trying to control how you feel about yourself in order to exert power over you. By making you feel inferior, incapable, or less valuable, they can maintain dominance in the relationship. They know that an insecure person is more easily manipulated and more dependent on them for validation. It's a dangerous power dynamic where the victim is constantly seeking reassurance, approval, or love from the perpetrator, always measuring themselves against a distorted standard. The consequence of this continual undermining is that it leaves the victim in a perpetual state of emotional instability. Instead of feeling secure in who they are, they feel like a constant work in progress, never quite good enough. They may find themselves stuck in a cycle of self-doubt, anxiety, and even depression. And perhaps the most insidious part of this is that it doesn't always seem like a deliberate attack. The person doing the undermining may act as if they are only telling it like it is, or pointing out the truth. This makes it even harder to confront. After all, how can you argue with someone who says they're just being honest? The victim begins to feel that maybe they are, in fact, being overly sensitive or unreasonable, leading to even more confusion and self-blame. It's also important to understand that this form of manipulation can take on different forms depending on the relationship. In a romantic relationship, for instance, the undermining of self-worth might manifest as criticism of your appearance, your abilities, or your intelligence, aimed at making you feel inadequate or unworthy of love. In a family dynamic, it may show up as belittling comments from a parent or sibling that make you feel like you will never live up to their expectations. In friendships, it might look like passive-aggressive remarks about your achievements or insinuations that you're not doing enough with your life. Many men grow up with the belief that emotions, especially romantic ones, must be controlled, managed, or even suppressed. They are taught, either implicitly or explicitly, that expressing deep feelings is a sign of weakness, a loss of control, or a deviation from the rational, goal-oriented mindset that society often associates with masculinity. As a result, when a man finds himself developing strong feelings for someone, he may instinctively resist them, fearing that acknowledging them would disrupt the equilibrium he has worked so hard to maintain. This resistance is not always conscious. The human mind has an incredible ability to compartmentalize emotions, pushing aside thoughts and feelings that do not align with a person's perceived identity or goals. A man who has trained himself to be emotionally self-sufficient may view attraction or deep emotional attachment as a vulnerability, something that exposes him to the risk of rejection, emotional pain, or even failure. So rather than confronting his emotions head on, he fights them, convincing himself that they do not exist or that they are insignificant. One of the primary reasons men suppress their emotions is the fear of losing control. Control is a deeply ingrained aspect of the masculine psyche. Control over one's actions, one's ambitions, and most importantly, one's emotions. A man who values self-discipline and rationality may view deep emotional attachment as something unpredictable, something that threatens his carefully constructed sense of order. He may feel that admitting his feelings would make him susceptible to irrational decisions, or that it would shift his focus away from the things he considers most important in life, such as his career, ambitions, or personal growth. This internal conflict often manifests in avoidance behavior. The mind, in its attempt to maintain control, pushes away the very thing that disrupts it. A man fighting his emotions might become distant, disengaging from the person he is drawn to, not because he lacks feelings, but precisely because his feelings are too strong. He may avoid conversations, limit eye contact, or even withdraw from social situations where she is present. This withdrawal is not an indication of disinterest, but rather a protective mechanism, an attempt to suppress emotions before they become overwhelming. However, emotions are not so easily controlled. The more one tries to suppress them, the more they find ways to surface. This is why avoidance is often followed by moments of unexpected attentiveness. The same man who distances himself may suddenly become hyper-aware of the person he is trying to ignore. He may find himself drawn into conversations with her, offering support, advice, or unexpected acts of kindness. These moments of engagement are not random. They are the subconscious mind's way of reconciling the suppression of emotion with the undeniable reality of its existence. Another reason men fight their emotions is past experiences. If a man has been hurt before, if he has faced rejection, betrayal, or emotional turmoil, he may associate deep feelings with pain. His subconscious mind tells him that allowing himself to feel again is a risk, a potential gateway to another heartbreak. He may even develop a belief that emotional attachment leads to vulnerability, and vulnerability leads to suffering. As a result, he convinces himself that it is better to resist than to embrace, better to suppress than to take the risk of being hurt again. In many cases, societal expectations play a role in emotional suppression. From an early age, many men are conditioned to believe that expressing emotions, especially romantic ones, should be done sparingly, if at all. They are taught to be logical, to be strong, to be providers rather than emotional beings. These deeply ingrained beliefs can make it difficult for a man to openly acknowledge his feelings, even to himself. He may struggle with the idea that being emotionally invested in someone means relinquishing control, making himself vulnerable, or even appearing weak. Despite all efforts to suppress emotions, the truth often reveals itself in nonverbal ways. The body, unlike the mind, is not as easily controlled. A man who is fighting his feelings may exhibit unconscious behaviors that betray his true emotions. He may glance at her when he thinks she isn't looking, position himself near her even when he doesn't intend to, or exhibit subtle protective instincts such as stepping in when she is uncomfortable or offering help without being asked. These behaviors are not calculated, they emerge naturally because emotions, no matter how much they are suppressed, always seek an outlet. This internal struggle can also lead to emotional inconsistency. He may be warm and engaged one moment, then cold and distant the next. This back and forth behavior is a sign of an unresolved internal conflict. His rational mind is telling him to stay in control, while his emotional mind is pulling him toward her. The inconsistency is not an indication of manipulation, but rather an internal negotiation, a subconscious attempt to find balance between feeling and restraint. For those who find themselves in a situation where a man is fighting his feelings, the most important thing to remember is that this struggle is his own. It is not a reflection of the other person's worth, nor is it a deliberate attempt to create confusion or frustration. It is simply the result of a deeply ingrained psychological mechanism, one that is trying to reconcile emotion with self-perception. Ultimately, the suppression of emotion is not a sustainable strategy. A man can fight his feelings for a time, but emotions do not disappear simply because they are ignored. They persist, they manifest in unexpected ways, and eventually they demand to be acknowledged. The question is not whether he has feelings, it is whether he has the courage to accept them, because true strength is not found in suppression, but in the willingness to confront emotions honestly, to embrace vulnerability, and to recognize that the most meaningful connections in life come not from control, but from authenticity. When a man is struggling with his feelings, one of the most revealing aspects of his behavior is how he reacts when other men show interest in the woman he is emotionally drawn to. Even if he tries to convince himself that his feelings are under control or that he does not care, his subconscious reactions often tell a different story. Human emotions, particularly those related to attraction and attachment, are not easily controlled. They manifest in ways that can be subtle, yet undeniable. A man who is actively fighting his emotions will often attempt to maintain a sense of emotional detachment. He may tell himself that his feelings are irrelevant, that he has no right to care, or that his emotions should not influence his actions. But the moment another man enters the picture, a shift occurs. He may not vocalize his discomfort, but his body language, his mood, and his engagement in the situation will likely change. And even if he does not consciously recognize his reaction, those around him might notice small but significant signs of unease. One of the most common responses in this situation is an increase in attentiveness. A man who was previously distant, indifferent, or preoccupied with other things may suddenly become more aware of what is happening around him. He may listen more intently to conversations, track interactions between the woman and the other man, or subtly adjust his body language to position himself closer to her. These behaviors are not always intentional, but they are revealing. They stem from an instinctual response to perceived competition, a subconscious recognition that someone else is stepping into a space he has been resisting but has not yet been willing to give up. His reaction may also manifest in protective behaviors. He might make small but noticeable efforts to steer the conversation in a different direction, subtly insert himself into interactions, or find ways to keep her attention on him rather than on the other man. He may downplay the qualities of the other man, either through light teasing, sarcasm, or dismissive remarks. These behaviors are not necessarily aggressive or overt, but they indicate an internal conflict. His emotions are being challenged, and his subconscious is responding before his conscious mind can intervene. Jealousy in this context does not always look like the stereotypical displays of possessiveness or overt discomfort. In many cases, it is far more controlled, manifesting in small behavioral shifts that only become obvious when viewed in patterns over time. A man who is trying to suppress his emotions may not even realize why he feels irritated or distracted when another man is around, but his actions will often betray him. He might become quieter than usual, his humor might take on a sharper edge, or he might suddenly find reasons to leave the situation altogether. The inconsistency in his behavior is what makes this reaction so revealing. If he truly felt nothing, there would be no noticeable change. The struggle intensifies when he sees that the woman responds positively to another man's attention. If she appears engaged, interested, or receptive to the other man's presence, he may experience a deeper internal reaction. His rational mind might tell him that he has no right to care, that he has no claim over her, and that his feelings should not dictate his actions. But at the same time, his emotions will push against this logic, creating a sense of discomfort that he cannot easily ignore. He may find himself making excuses for why the other man is not a good fit for her or why she should be cautious. His protective instincts might emerge, leading him to subtly discourage her interest without making his own emotions obvious. In some cases, the discomfort of seeing another man in that space may push him to temporarily abandon his emotional restraint. He might become more engaged, more talkative, or more physically present than he usually is. This is not necessarily a conscious strategy, it is simply an automatic response to feeling like he is losing something he has not yet acknowledged wanting. The fear of loss often brings clarity to emotions that were previously denied or ignored. Until he is confronted with the possibility of someone else stepping into the role he has been resisting, he may not fully recognize the depth of his own feelings. For a man who is deeply committed to maintaining control over his emotions, this situation presents a serious dilemma. He may oscillate between withdrawal and engagement, unsure of whether to step forward or retreat entirely. The frustration of this internal struggle may even cause him to act in ways that contradict his usual personality. He might become irritated over small things, display unexpected bursts of emotion, or seem unusually preoccupied. These reactions are not intentional, but they are an indication that his feelings are no longer as neatly contained as he once believed. If he has been suppressing his emotions for a long time, witnessing someone else's interest in her may serve as a tipping point. It forces him to confront a reality that he has been avoiding, that his emotions exist, that they matter, and that ignoring them will not make them disappear. In some cases, this realization pushes him toward acceptance. He may finally acknowledge that he has feelings and begin to act accordingly. In other cases, he may double down on his resistance, convincing himself that he should not feel the way he does. Either way, his reaction to competition reveals the truth of his emotions, even if he is not yet ready to admit it. Ultimately, a man's reaction to another man showing interest in the woman he is drawn to is one of the clearest indications of whether he has been fighting his feelings. If he truly felt nothing, he would remain unaffected. But when his emotions are real, they will surface, even against his will. It is in these moments, when logic and emotion come into direct conflict, that the truth becomes undeniable. Whether he chooses to act on his feelings or continue resisting them is a different question, but his reaction itself speaks louder than words ever could. This type of dynamic can make you feel as though you are constantly walking on eggshells, always trying to keep the peace or provide support, but never truly getting the space you need to breathe or recharge. Even when you try to set boundaries or communicate your need for time to yourself, they might not respect those boundaries. You may find yourself constantly saying yes to them, even when you know you should say no. This lack of respect for your personal boundaries often stems from their own emotional dependence on you. The more they demand your time, the more you give in an attempt to prevent conflict or to avoid feeling guilty for not being there for them. The real issue arises when this pattern starts to negatively impact your own life. You may begin to notice that you are always giving and never receiving, emotionally, mentally, or even practically. You may have started to lose touch with your own passions and interests because you are so preoccupied with fixing or helping the other person. Your goals become secondary to their immediate emotional needs. It's as if your own life is constantly put on pause, with their drama taking precedence over everything else. You might also begin to feel resentment building up. What was once a genuine desire to help has now transformed into a burdensome responsibility that feels one-sided and unfair. This emotional exhaustion can manifest in physical ways as well. You might experience feelings of fatigue, burnout, or even anxiety as a result of constantly being drained by someone who cannot or will not take responsibility for their own needs. You find yourself mentally and emotionally exhausted after interactions with them, and you might even start avoiding them because you anticipate how much of a toll it will take on your emotional well-being. This is the point where it becomes absolutely essential to recognize the pattern and take action to protect your mental and emotional health. The first step is to acknowledge that this person is not only draining your energy, but is also taking away from your capacity to care for yourself or to give to others in a healthy, balanced way. If someone in your life consistently demands more of you than you can reasonably give, it is a sign that your boundaries are not being respected. Without proper boundaries, you cannot maintain your sense of autonomy, and you may begin to feel like a resource to be depleted rather than an individual worthy of care. Setting boundaries is the key to reclaiming your time and energy. You may need to take a step back and reevaluate the relationship. Establish clear limits on what you are willing to give and stick to them. It may be uncomfortable at first, especially if this person has come to expect that you will always be there to meet their needs, but it is crucial to understand that you cannot pour from an empty cup. If you don't prioritize your own well-being, you will have nothing left to offer in any relationship, and the cycle of being drained will continue. In the end, maintaining healthy boundaries and ensuring that your time and energy are not constantly being drained is essential for your own well-being. You deserve relationships that are mutually supportive, where your needs are just as important as the other person's. Recognizing when someone is continually draining you and taking the necessary steps to protect your emotional health is a sign of self-respect and self-care. By reclaiming your time and energy, you make space for growth, balance, and the pursuit of your own goals and passions. One of the most dangerous and insidious behaviors that someone in your life can exhibit is manipulating your perception of reality. This form of psychological manipulation, often referred to as gaslighting, is a deliberate attempt to make you doubt your own thoughts, feelings, and experiences. It is a tactic that can be incredibly damaging, as it undermines your ability to trust your own judgment and can leave you feeling confused, powerless, and uncertain. When someone in your life is manipulating your perception of reality, they are not just trying to distort the truth, they are trying to gain control over your mind, emotions, and sense of self. This behavior can be subtle at first, but over time it becomes increasingly more apparent, and it can have devastating effects on your mental health. The core of gaslighting is a systematic effort to distort the truth in a way that makes you question your own sanity. This manipulation often involves denying things that you know to be true, or rewriting the narrative of past events in such a way that you begin to doubt your own recollections. For example, a person might tell you that something you distinctly remember saying or doing never actually happened, or that you are misinterpreting their intentions or actions. They might claim that their behavior was perfectly normal, or even accuse you of being paranoid or overly sensitive. Over time, these denials start to eat away at your confidence in your own perception of reality, making you question whether you are misremembering things or reacting inappropriately. At the heart of this manipulation is the effort to create a sense of confusion and instability in your mind. The person doing the gaslighting may also subtly twist your words or actions, turning them back on you and using them against you. If you express concerns or discomfort about their behavior, they may immediately dismiss your feelings, accusing you of being irrational or emotional. This constant invalidation of your reality can create a sense of cognitive dissonance, where you are torn between trusting your own understanding of the world and the version of reality that the manipulator is forcing upon you. Over time, you may become unsure of where the truth ends and where the lies begin. This makes it much easier for the manipulator to control you as they begin to take on the role of the ultimate authority in your life. The psychological toll of being gaslit is immense. As your perception of reality becomes increasingly distorted, you may begin to feel as though you are losing touch with what is real and what is imagined. You might become hyper-aware of your own responses and emotions, second-guessing every reaction and questioning whether you are justified in feeling the way you do. This constant self-doubt can lead to feelings of isolation as you start to withdraw from others for fear that they might not understand your experiences or might accuse you of overreacting. You may also find yourself questioning your own memory, becoming unsure of what happened during important conversations or events. In some cases, you may even begin to accept the manipulator's version of events as the truth, discarding your own recollections in favor of their narrative. Gaslighting can also extend to the manipulation of your emotions. The person doing the gaslighting might play on your vulnerabilities, using your past experiences, insecurities, or fears to further distort your perception of reality. They might say things like, "You're just too sensitive," or "You always overreact," making you feel as though your emotional responses are disproportionate or irrational. This tactic not only causes you to doubt your own feelings, but also strips you of your agency as you begin to rely on the manipulator's interpretation of your emotions rather than trusting your own inner compass. Over time, you may find yourself apologizing for things you didn't do, or downplaying your own emotions in an effort to avoid conflict or to gain approval. One of the most disturbing aspects of gaslighting is that it often occurs in relationships where you have placed your trust. A partner, family member, or close friend who engages in this manipulation is usually someone who knows you intimately, someone you rely on for emotional support and validation. This makes it all the more difficult to recognize because you are often torn between your desire to trust the person and the mounting evidence that they are not being honest with you. The emotional confusion caused by gaslighting can make you feel as though you are losing your grip on reality, and in some cases you may even begin to believe that you are the one at fault for the dysfunction in the relationship. Another hallmark of gaslighting is the manipulator's ability to make you feel like you are going crazy for doubting them. If you confront them about their behavior, they will likely deny everything and accuse you of imagining things or being too emotional. They may even flip the situation, painting themselves as the victim and portraying you as the aggressor. This psychological warfare leaves you questioning your own sense of self, as the manipulator's consistent attempts to distort the truth begin to erode your confidence and self-trust. This can be a particularly damaging form of manipulation because it not only undermines your perception of reality, but also makes you feel as though you are the one who is flawed or delusional, further isolating you from any outside support or validation. The consequences of being gaslit over an extended period can be far-reaching. The constant erosion of your sense of self and reality can lead to a range of emotional and psychological issues, including anxiety, depression, and a diminished sense of self-worth. The longer you are exposed to this kind of manipulation, the more difficult it becomes to break free from the cycle of confusion and self-doubt. In extreme cases, gaslighting can leave you feeling completely disoriented, unable to trust your own thoughts or emotions. You may even begin to rely entirely on the manipulator's version of events, losing the ability to assert your own identity and boundaries. Recognizing gaslighting and manipulative behaviors in relationships is crucial for protecting your mental health. The first step is acknowledging that your perception of reality is being distorted. Trust your own instincts and emotions, and do not let anyone make you feel crazy or invalid. If someone consistently manipulates your understanding of events or makes you feel like you are overreacting, it is important to distance yourself from that person and seek support from trusted friends, family members, or professionals. Rebuilding your sense of self and reclaiming your autonomy is key to breaking free from the grip of manipulation. Ultimately, manipulation of your perception of reality is a violation of trust and respect. It is a deliberate attempt to control and dominate your thoughts, feelings, and experiences. Understanding how this behavior works, recognizing it in your relationships, and taking steps to protect yourself is essential to preserving your mental and emotional well-being. By standing firm in your truth, you can begin to heal from the damage caused by manipulation and move forward with a renewed sense of clarity and self-confidence. In conclusion, recognizing the signs of toxic or manipulative behavior in those around you is essential for safeguarding your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. The behaviors we've discussed, ranging from lack of empathy and emotional validation to manipulation of reality, are all warning signs that someone may be intentionally or unintentionally draining your energy, distorting your perception, and diminishing your sense of self-worth. These behaviors not only harm your immediate emotional health, but can also create lasting psychological scars that affect your future relationships and personal growth. It is crucial to understand that we all deserve relationships built on mutual respect, empathy, and trust. No one should ever have to constantly give more than they receive, nor should they feel as though their feelings or perceptions are invalidated. By recognizing when these toxic patterns emerge, you can take the necessary steps to protect your boundaries, assert your needs, and prioritize your emotional health. Setting boundaries, seeking support, and distancing yourself from those who continually drain or manipulate you is not only an act of self-care, but a vital step toward reclaiming your own power and maintaining your mental clarity. Remember, you are not responsible for the behaviors of others, nor should you accept toxic dynamics in your life. Reaffirm your worth, trust your instincts, and seek out relationships where empathy, respect, and genuine support are reciprocal. By doing so, you will create space for healthier, more fulfilling connections and ultimately pave the way for a life that honors your emotional and mental well-being.